Commutation readings are made possible thanks to viewers like you. Please visit us at commutationconstruct.locals.com. Memberships are free to start with coupon code CCFREE. Hello and welcome back to Commutation Readings. My name is James Derry and I am the host of this channel, and today we are going to be going through Anti-Federalist Paper number 6. So before we get into it, if you like seeing read-throughs like this, be sure to make sure you give me a follow and subscribe. I got to do that for the algorithm, so I just want to mention it here early. But yeah, let's just hop on into it. So, Anti-Federalist number 6, the hobgoblins of anarchy and dissension among the states. As I was saying, I believe this one is a direct response to the Federalist paper we just read, so I think this is going to be a good one. The evils of anarchy have been portrayed with all the imagery of language in the growing colors of eloquence. The affrighted mind is thence led to clasp the new Constitution as the instrument of deliverance, as the only avenue to safety and happiness. To avoid the possible and transitory evils of one extreme, it is seduced into the certain and permanent misery necessarily attendant on the other. A state of anarchy, from its very nature, can never be of long continuance. The greater its violence, the shorter the duration. Order and security are immediately sought by the distracted people beneath the shelter of equal laws and the salutary restraints of regular government. And if this be not attainable, absolute power is assumed by the one or a few, who shall be the most enterprising and successful. If anarchy, therefore, were the inevitable consequence of rejecting the new Constitution, it would be infinitely better to incur it, for even then there would be at least a chance of a good government rising out of licentiousness. Wow, that is a fire claim. All right. But to rush at once into despotism, because there is a bare possibility of anarchy ensuing from a rejection, or from what is yet more visionary, the small delay that would be occasioned by a revision and correction of the proposed system of government, is so superlatively weak, so fatally blind, that it is astonishing any person of common understanding should suffer such an imposition to have the least influence on his judgment. Still more astonishing that so flimsy and deceptive a doctrine should make converts among enlightened freemen of America, who have so long enjoyed the blessing of liberty. But when I view among such converts men otherwise preeminent it raises a blush for the weakness of humanity, that these, her brightest ornaments, should be so dim-sighted to what is self-evident to most men, that such imbecility of judgment should appear where so much perfection was looked for. This ought to teach us to depend more on our own judgment in the nature of the case than upon the opinions of the greatest and best of men, who, from constitutional infirmities or particular situations, may sometimes view an object through a delusive medium. But the opinions of great men are more frequently than dictates of ambition or private interest. The source of the apprehensions of this so much dreaded anarchy would, upon investigation, be found to arise from the artful suggestion of designing men, and not from a rational probability grounded on the actual state of affairs. The least reflection is sufficient to detect the fallacy, to show that there is no one circumstance to justify the prediction of such an event. On the contrary, a short time will evince to the utter dismay and confusion of the conspirators that a perseverance is cramming down their scheme of power upon the free men of this state, Pennsylvania, will inevitably produce an anarchy destructive of their darling domination, and may kindle a flame prejudicial to their safety. They should be cautious not to trespass too far on the forbearance of freemen when resting their dearest concerns, but prudently retreat from the gathering storms. All right, let's go back and kind of give this a bit of a glance over, because this is definitely a retort to the previous Federalist paper, where they're talking about the wars between the states and the violence that would ensue from the sheer conflict of interest, or conflict of personal interest, or self-interest overriding that of what would be best for people, as seen in many nations across history. Ironically, this is I do find that previous argument actually very good. So it's interesting to see a more philosophical argument being brought back against it about the blessings of liberty, and essentially saying, yo, let's wait and see this out. That kind of seems to be, it's a little funny, but the fight on what exactly is being argued, it's interesting, because it doesn't seem necessarily that either side has been necessarily wrong in their argument, because it's coming through that there is a step that can be taken to essentially ensure longevity and provision and success of a good government, whereas one side sees what the steps that are being chosen through the Constitution to be necessary and beneficial, whereas the other sees the Constitution and the steps that it would take being overbearing and going too far to the point of despotism, and enabling those same private interests that would cause those kinds of problems that were discussed to cause war. But I also find it funny that he's basically saying, yeah, people are being convinced by this, just shows that you shouldn't listen to people. That's kind of funny. All right, let's continue. The other specter that has been raised to terrify and alarm the people out of the exercise of their judgment on this great occasion is the dread of our splitting into separate confederacies or republics that might become rival powers and consequently liable to mutual wars from the usual motives of contention. Oh, finally, we're having the Anti-Federalist Papers respond to the Federalists' constant remarks that the U.S. would break down into multiple different smaller confederacies or republics, or even become become sovereign states that do not have any kind of ties and just make treaties with one another. So this is a direct response to what they've been claiming for almost the entirety of the Federalist Papers. I'm looking forward to this one. All right, let's get into it. This is an event still more improbable than the foregoing. It is a presumption unwarranted, either by the situation or affairs or the sentiments of the people. No disposition leading to it exists. The advocates of the new Constitution seem to view such a separation with horror, and its opponents are strenuously contending for a confederation that shall embrace all America under its comprehensive and salutary protection. Wait. Is he saying that from their view, the opponents are wanting to make a confederation that will embrace all of America under its comprehensive salutary protection? Or is it saying that the opponents is he saying the opponents actually are? Hold on, let's keep reading and see. This hobgoblin appears to have sprung from the deranged brains of Publius. calling him out directly. A New York writer who, mistaking sound for argument, has with Herculean labor accumulated myriads of unmeaning sentences and mechanically endeavored to force conviction by a torrent of misplaced words. Wow. And people think politics are hot these days. All right, let's go. He might have spared his readers the fatigue of wading through his long-winded disquisitions on the direful effects of the contentions of inimical states, as totally inapplicable to the subject he was professedly treating. This writer has devoted much time and wasted more paper in combating chimeras of his own creation. However, for the sake of argument, I will admit that the necessary consequence of rejecting or delaying the establishment of the new Constitution would be the dissolution of the Union. Hold on. I lost my spot. However, for the sake of argument, I will admit that the necessary consequence of rejecting or delaying the establishment of the new Constitution would be the dissolution of the Union and the institution of ever-rival inimical republics. Yet ought such an apprehension, if well-founded, to drive us into the fangs of despotism. Infinitely preferable would be occasional wars to such an event. The former, although a severe scourge, is transient in its continuance and in its operation partial, but a small proportion of the community are exposed to its great horrors, and yet fewer experience its greatest evils. The latter is permanent and universal misery, without remission or exemption. As passing clouds obscure for a time the splendor of the sun, so do wars interrupt the welfare of mankind. But despotism is a settled... they missed an I there too. That's the second word they got wrong. But despotism is a settled gloom that totally extinguishes happiness. Not a ray of comfort can penetrate to cheer the dejected mind. The goad of power, with unbating rigor, insists upon the utmost exaction, like a merciless taskmaster. It is continually inflicting the lash, and is never satiated with a feast of unfeeling domination and a most abject servility. Okay. There's actually a lot to break down here. So, for the sake of argument, he will admit that the necessary consequence of rejecting or delaying the establishment of the new Constitution would be the dissolution of the Union. So, okay. It sounds like the anti-federalists are saying the Union will break apart if they take on the or if they reject the Constitution. Now he's saying for the sake of argument, so I don't know if he's saying this as an admitted fact that it would be necessary. It's weird that he says for the sake of argument. He says he's admitting that it would be a necessary consequence. So I can't tell if he's specifically saying that this is a possibility, or by your words, if this was the case, if it was a consequence, what would be the outcome? So again, this is another one of those times where the wording of the time may not be recognized the same way it would be today. So either he's saying, I'll grant you that this will happen, that the Union will fall apart as it currently exists, or maybe he's saying, I'll accept your worst case scenario and make the argument regarding that. Probably the latter, honestly, though it does read like the former. So it's an interesting argument, because he's basically saying, yeah, we'll have wars. Wars will be bad, and they are definitely a blight upon humanity, but at the very least, through the individual powers and the individual sovereignties of the states and confederacies that are formed, we'll be able to overall maximize the liberty and success of the people. Maximize the welfare of mankind, I suppose would be the way he would probably put it. So we have this whole situation where breaking apart actually would cause more wars. It would cause more destruction, more danger. But on the flip side, while we're not in war, the general welfare will be better, as we'll have so much more localized control, and we're not going to be subject to a despotic government. Which, how despotic is our government? There's questions about that that could be brought up. So let's see, how does this continue? How does this end? The celebrated Lord Kames, whose disquisitions of human nature evidence extraordinary strength of judgment and depth of investigation, says that a continual civil war, which is the most destructive and horrible scene of human discord, is preferable to the uniformity of wretchedness and misery attendant upon despotism. Of all possible evils, as I observe in my first number, this is the worst and the most to be dreaded. I congratulate my fellow citizens that a good government, the greatest earthly blessing, may be so easily obtained, that our circumstances are so favorable that nothing but the folly of the conspirators can produce anarchy or civil war, which would presently terminate in their destruction the permanent harmony of the state, alone interrupted by their ambitious machinations. Okay, yeah, this is a very scathing response, calling out Publius by name and saying just, you're making shit up. You are talking at your ass. You're making an argument against something that is completely in your own mind. Here, even to humor you, I will point out that all your fears of war are better results than having misery and despotism. And here's my sources for it. So it's funny because even just reading the last Federalist paper, I was saying, oh yeah, I like seeing all this anti-war stuff. But here we say, well, yeah, but war is preferable to being to basically being enslaved by being under a rigid centralized government that can force people to be in a specific way. This was a pretty short one, other than that first paragraph, but what a scathing response. I definitely found this one to be a very fun paper to read. Definitely a fun, a good change of pace, pick things up a bit. And yeah, what do you guys think? Do you agree with them that Publius is talking out his ass? I think I kind of, I think you guys all know my thoughts, because I was basically criticizing him for doing exactly that in all of my first four, I think. All my first four Federalist Papers, I had brought up that he's not talking about the subject at hand. He's actually making something up and talking about a phantom problem. So, yeah, crazy stuff. Anyhow, I guess I was born to be an anti-federalist. But, yeah, that's it for me for today. Remember, subscribe if you want. Hit the little bell. Make sure it's got those little marks on the side so you can get notifications when I do my uploads. I know my schedule's a little inconsistent. I'm working on getting it better. It'll definitely be good and regular around early next year. In January, I've got a lot of stuff going on with the holidays and whatnot, and I've been doing a lot to prep for that, as well as some future plans that I've got coming up. So there's a lot to look forward to. Anyhow, it has been a pleasure speaking with you all today. And again, if you liked it, you know what to do. If you disliked it, you know what the other option is. And leave a comment below. Tell me your thoughts. It can be on this Anti-Federalist paper, your take on Publius up to this point as either a counter or a response to this paper even. If you feel in agreement about what he says about Publius with the breaking down into multiple different confederacies or even just individual sovereignties among the states, which our states are supposed to be sovereign in a way under the Constitution. That's the purpose of the 10th Amendment. So yeah, just let me know your thoughts. I'm really looking forward to reading your comments below, and I will talk to you guys later. Follow me at commutationconstruct.locals.com. Hit me up on Twitter. I will leave all my social media in the description below, and I will catch you guys later. See ya.